Good morning and welcome to the DataOn Storage webinar on the future of Microsoft Storage. This is Sean Walsh. I'll be acting as moderator for today and doing a little bit of speaking. So a few housekeeping items. We are going to have the audience on mute during this process, but use the chat window to ask questions. And we will address those as we go to the end of the webcast. We'll do a Q&A session at the end. The slides will be made available on dataonstorage.com. And there will also be a recorded version of the webcast available both on the on-stream DataOn channel as well as at the DataOn Storage website. So as you mentioned, today's webcast is about the future of Microsoft Storage. And it will feature a case study and interview with the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology IT team. And they are going to tell you what their experience was in moving from traditional SANs based on iSCSI into Microsoft storage spaces and how that's helped them grow and improve the operations of their IT data center and team. With us today for speakers is our host from DataOn Storage, Howard Lowe, Vice President of Sales and Marketing. From Microsoft, we have Matt McSpirit, their technical evangelist. From HGST, we have Chris Menon from the business development team. So with that, let's jump into the presentation. So as we said, we're going to talk about a number of the key trends that are in the business, Microsoft storage strategy, the HGST tiered storage where we combine SSD and HDD. Then we'll do the video case study, and then Howard will talk about the DataOn Storage platform and what they're doing for their future plans for Microsoft's software-defined storage capabilities, Q&A, and then we'll wrap up the session. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in storage trends. So when we talk about storage trends, there are a couple of big buckets that occur. First are the changes in terms of what's happening with applications. So we're seeing a trend towards more in-memory applications to get real-time analytics. We're seeing a demand for lower latency, and we're seeing the need to burst for scale. And these tie into the next couple of trends, which are around flash and SSD. So when you have in-memory applications or high-performance applications, then what happens is you have to have faster storage to load things in and out of the systems, and you want to have hybrid capabilities, so you're not paying premium dollar for cold storage and items that you don't want to have in the hottest spots inside your system. And then for those hottest spots, you want the highest performance technology. And HGST and DataOn will talk about how they address those going forward. Next is this move towards software-defined storage. And this is driven by three things. Number one is replacing traditional SANs. The traditional SAN model is being replaced by software-defined storage for three very, very simple reasons. The ability to scale out as well as scale up concurrently. The flexibility to size what you need in the market. And then, most importantly, the ability to then integrate with cloud and other types of applications. You can have a hybrid model where you have on-premises as well as hybrid cloud. You can do DR automatically. You can do policy-driven storage. You can have that both local and remote. And you can pick multiple partners in terms of how you do that. And then the security and services. So obviously virtualization and replication, migration are things that you would expect. But as we move forward, how you monitor the performance of applications is also changing. And that's one of the beautiful parts about software-defined storage, is before you would have to call one of the major storage vendors in to come in and either do a forklift upgrade or some type of configuration change. And now you can do all of that yourself. So when you look at these major trends, these are things that you'll see in our discussion today. And we spoke to Enterprise Strategy Group about this. They recently did a study that looked at what was the cost difference and the performance difference between going from traditional iSCSI onto software-defined storage. So when you give the, when you take a look at what the limitations were of iSCSI, both in terms of bandwidth and in terms of the storage type of situations they had, they were fairly expensive types of systems. So to deploy a fairly typical type of environment, you were talking something in the neighborhood of 100 grand. And that was for fiber channel. iSCSI saved you because you didn't have the cost of fiber channel, but the Ethernet part gave up performance, and it also lacked scale, and it didn't come with the same management capabilities. Now when you move to software-defined storage, you get all the same software capabilities. You get the flexibility of traditional x86 platforms to run it. You get off-the-shelf standard parts, and your cost of acquisition drops by nearly 50%. And this is what you're seeing in this data from ESG. So when we talk about the first step in this move, which is moving towards Windows Storage Server 2012 and using the storage spaces capability, leveraging the SMB and SMB direct capabilities that allow you to not only scale up in performance, but scale out across multiple racks of systems. And you can leverage high capacity with things like JBOD, as well as high performance with SSD and flash and those sorts of things. And the last part is making this simple. These are all user interfaces that you guys know as Windows administrators. And that, more than anything else, I think is really the key to this move to software-defined storage, is at the end of the day, the businesses that you are supporting are not in the storage business. They're in insurance, they're in retail, they're in various other types of things that generate revenue for your company. And the simpler it is to manage the IT backend, and the faster you can grow your revenue for your company, the more successful you are in your roles in the IT side. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Matt and let him tell you about Microsoft's storage strategy. Matt?
Thank you, Sean. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great, excellent. So good morning or good evening or good afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm Matt McSpirit, Technical Evangelist at Microsoft. Lots of different ways you can get in touch with me, but the easiest way is at Matt McSpirit on Twitter. And I'm going to spend the next 9 or 10 minutes talking through just what Microsoft is doing in Windows Server, just a recap of what we delivered in 2012 R2, of which DataOn and HGST have been fantastic partners for us and great for you guys. And then we're going to take a look at some of the stuff that's coming in Windows Server 2016, due out later this year. So, where do we start? Well, it's a question that when we think about the early days of storage spaces, we had to spend a little bit of time helping people understand just what they were buying in this black box that was the SAN. You know, you get it back to your data center or your office, you never take the cover off, you never look inside, but the reality of what's in a SAN is it's packed full of disks, either internally or with external disk shelves, flash-based SSDs or regular spinning hard drives. There's some sort of proprietary controller, multiple typically, for redundancy and maintenance activities, and that provides the intelligence for thin provisioning, dedupe, tiering, all of those kind of features that you may get included with your SAN or you may license separately at some kind of cost. But then we think about some of the other new capability, some of the other areas of the storage array, the connectivity. Do you choose fiber? Do you choose iSCSI? Do you choose an SMB or NFS approach? Or do you have a combination? Well, in many cases, the SANs aren't as flexible as that. You choose one and you stick with it, and that's all you've got. When we think about the next generation of Microsoft storage and what we're delivering both in 2012 R2 and 2016, we take those same kind of approaches. So taking physical disks, raw physical disks, multiple options, whether it's hard disk drives or SSDs, and we'll talk about some of the new options going forward as well. We place them in a JBOD typically, and just one architecture example I'm giving here. And we put Windows Server in front of that. So Windows Server is commoditizing the SAN controller that we just briefly talked about and transforming through the storage spaces technology and a scale-out file server, utilizing thin provisioning, tiering, deduplication, mirroring, parity, and all that, those great storage technologies built in to Windows Server, both in 2012 R2 and going forward in 2016. And then the flexibility to just integrate with your existing investments, the network. You know, everyone's got a network. Just choosing the right adapters for your environment. 1 gig, yes, you can do it. 10 gig preferable. 10 gig with RDMA, or even faster with RDMA, so remote device memory access adapters, which are coming down in price all of the time. They really do accelerate the performance across that network to connect to your backend storage. So you'll see that the configuration, the architecture, is actually very, very similar to the SAN. It's just exploded and separated across different components. So if we take a look at an architecture specifically, For 2012 R2, this is where we were, or this is where we are today before 2016 comes along. You have a JBOD with SSDs and hard disk drives, and you'll see I've given the example DataOn SKU there, just one example of what DataOn provides. A chassis packed with hard drives, lots of capacity with SSDs for that performance as well. And we front that with the controllers. Now this could be separate, or if you wanted to combine those, DataOn do a great platform where they combine those into what we generally term a cluster-in-a-box solution, where the storage nodes are combined with the JBOD, and you're able to realize benefits of reduced complexity and a solution that ships to you ready to go, which is awesome. Then, what else? Well, you just connect to that from your Hyper-V host over SMB. Utilizing SMB Direct, that RDMA technology we briefly touched on before. If you want to go as high as 56 gig or 100 gig speeds, that's all possible now, and even better in the future. So that's 2012 R2. So think about those layers. You've got a Hyper-V layer that connects to that scale-out file server, and you're able to provide that SAN-like experience, great performance, great scale at a significantly reduced cost. Then we think about new architectures that we're introducing in Windows Server 2016. And the first is one that we sometimes term converged or also disaggregated. And this is still keeping those layers of Hyper-V hosts separate from the storage layer. But what we're talking about now, a new architecture in 2016, is having individual server nodes. So you'll see there are 4 on the slide there from left to right. But instead of having a separate JBOD, the disks, hard disk drives or SSDs, are within the individual server chassis themselves. So in the example here, we're showing 4 servers, each with 4 disks. It's a simple example. You would have more than that in reality. But another couple of key points. We now support not only SAS SSDs and hard disk drives like we used to in 2012 R2, but also SATA options, which reduces the cost. And in addition, new formats of drives like NVMe. So the non-volatile memory express, connected typically via PCI Express, can deliver incredible performance at a price point that's actually very, very aggressive and very great for customers out there who are weighing up their next generation of storage. So that's essentially what's happening there. Is you've got your 4 nodes, each with individual disks, and we are sharing the disks across those 4 nodes. And I use 4 as an example number. You can have more than that if you want to scale out. So you essentially, each node in this configuration sees, in our example, 16 disks. Okay, so yes, it's only got 4 in the chassis, but each node sees each of the other nodes' disks as well and aggregates them into a big pool. And then from there, you connect your Hyper-V hosts over the SMB fabric. So nothing changes there from that perspective. You'll see the key difference is that we've eliminated that JBOD, and the disks now exist within the chassis of the servers themselves. And that's a configuration. That's one option. We still classify that as disaggregated because it's separate from the Hyper-V layer. Don't get me wrong, you can do this. You can still take the approach of the previous JBOD approach. There's nothing wrong with either. You've got just another option to consider. And then finally, when we think about why, when we think about what we're doing in Azure, we're delivering incredibly impressive performance for storage in the cloud, but we're not utilizing that complex SAN-like technology. We're using local storage. So we're taking learnings from Azure, we're bringing that on-prem to enable you to deliver a reliable, scalable, flexible storage infrastructure that really enables you to do some incredible things around virtual infrastructure. And then we think about, okay, what about hyperconverged? Because this is a term that is becoming more and more of a reality for more and more customers. And hyperconverged is essentially saying, okay, let's compress the layers one step further. So let's run Hyper-V as a role of Windows Server on those same storage nodes. So instead of them being separated by that SMB fabric, they are now running on the nodes, on the storage nodes themselves. So this is a combination of Hyper-V and Storage Spaces Direct on the actual individual nodes. So it gives, again, people another option. It gives you a reduced layer of complexity, and it gives our partners great opportunities to deliver solutions that, again, fit your needs depending on your business needs. Great for remote branch office, great for enterprise alike. So you've really got some different scenarios there that you can use. 3 different architectures that we've touched on. And really we've just focused there on some of the architectures around storage spaces direct. But what about some of the other capabilities that are coming in the platform? There's storage replication, so synchronous storage replication between location A, location B. It could be server to server, it could be cluster to cluster, site to site. So not only asynchronous replication, both in the box. So this is very different from Hyper-V replica. This is at the volume level, replicating data between the different locations. So again, built in. Dedupe has had some incredible enhancements, making it more scalable and high performance. Support for bigger volumes, great for backup and archiving. You can really see some significant deduplication savings to reclaim some of that storage that you want to use elsewhere. And then when we think about noisy neighbors, so one VM really consuming a lot of your IOPS, we want to avoid those type scenarios. So we've built in a much more granular storage quality of service capability that enables you to fine-tune at the virtual disk, the VM, the group of VMs level, to enable you to control how much IOPS for a particular group of VMs, an individual virtual disk, whatever it may be. So a lot more fine-grained control to enable you to really avoid excessive consumption of IOPS from individual virtual machines within the infrastructure. And all of that is built into Windows Server 2016 going forward. So to recap, lots of cool stuff, great new architectures. Again, you don't have to go down the new architecture route. You can carry on using the similar architecture that we talked about in 2012 R2, but there's some new ones that give you new options for deployments with 2016, as well as enhancements around these kind of new storage features, new file system with REFS, not new, but enhanced and more relevant for virtual infrastructure as well, delivering great performance. So lots of useful resources as well. If you want to learn a little bit more, there's some great videos on Channel 9, some great performance videos as well. But that's me. So hopefully you found that useful. And yeah, don't be a stranger. Get in touch if you've got any questions, and happily to answer those at a later time. So back to you.
All right. Thanks for that, Matt. Next up is Chris Menon from HGST. Chris?
Hi guys, I'm Chris Menon from HGST Business Development Division, and I'm here to talk about how you could use HGST storage products to accelerate your applications. Before we talk about how we accelerate applications, let me tell you a little bit about HGST. The HGST brand from Western Digital Corporation develops innovative advanced hard disk drives, enterprise class solid state drives, storage systems and services. Now, think about why does DataOn prefer to deploy HGST products? We have the broadest portfolio of storage products. We lead the market with high capacity, high performance, low power drives. We have a heritage of innovation, which means we have more than 4,700 active worldwide patents just under the HGST brand. And not to be undermined, we have unmatched reputation for quality and reliability in storage devices. We have 2.5 million hour mean time between failures, which is one of industry leading metrics. And last but not least, we have global presence. You can source our products globally and are vertically integrated. And what better shows our commitment to storage and the fast-growing SSD category than our most recent acquisition of SanDisk. Now, balance is the name of the game. Users-facing applications or latency-sensitive applications need and benefit from flash. At the same time, archival and large storage requirements are best suited for hard drives. So we recommend you to pick the best tool for the job. We believe that this will be the structure in years to come. Balance is the answer. But for today's discussion, we'll focus on SSDs and how they accelerate your application for a better customer experience. Performance was one of the primary criteria for SSDs to be deployed for speeding up applications. However, as SSD technology became more prevalent, quality of service, or QoS, has gained relevance among enterprise users of this product. Our focus at HGST is to deliver our products with industry-leading QoS. So in this scenario, think about throughput on IOPS as how many cars you could flow through these lanes of your most busiest highway at any given time. In this case, as you see on the LA freeway, it looks pretty full with all those cars saturating those lanes. You would notice that as your throughput or number of cars that are flowing through the system increases, there's a saturation point and the quality of service or the time for you to get to your destination degrades. Now, this is a good time to ask, how does it degrade? I mean, I can go as fast and jam my freeways with cars, but how does it affect latency? How does it affect quality of service? The next slide I have here answers that very question. So what we did here is we took a typical Microsoft SQL workload to prove the point of saturation in the previous slide on IOPS. And as you see here, after QDEP 32, you really do not get any benefit in latency, as the magnitude of increase is almost double, or a 12% increase in IOPS. It's really important to find the right balance between throughput and latencies, as demonstrated on this chart. So that's your saturation window right there. So from 372 to 666, you do not get much increase in IOPS, but look at the latency as almost doubled. In this, keeping the track on applications, we took 2 other applications and are able to show that you would immensely benefit from the use of SSDs. This is a white paper that we worked jointly with Microsoft and DataOn to showcase the true benefits of using SAS SSDs in all SAS configuration JBOD running Hyper-V and storage spaces. Our next generation SAS SSDs are used in the Rose-Hulman case study that we'll be talking about in the next few slides. And here's another application where we saw a tremendous increase in performance using SAS SSDs for transactions per minute, where you see here you nearly get 2 times improvement when compared to an iSCSI implementation. Now, this question is asked by a lot of system admins that I am not sure what kind of workload do I need to implement SSDs for, and what is my block size for this particular application. Now, this is a really neat chart that will help you figure out what workloads do you encounter in your enterprise environment. It can be used for calculating capacity, endurance, and performance improvements for your applications. And like Sean mentioned earlier, we'll share these slide sets on dataon.com, so you can actually look at these at your convenience and implement as needed. Now, when we look at where SSDs have been and where they are going, the first wave, we have seen that latency-sensitive applications, including databases, web apps, analytics, and email, were early adopters, where Flash was used primarily for content indexing or metadata. Today, we see SQL servers for Web 2.0, SharePoint, and a Hyper-V running Flash as a primary storage medium. The storage spaces 2012 currently supports SAS for local storage. This 2016 will support NVMe or SATA. And that's a product line that HGST has to offer for 2016. In the second wave, we will see more analytics and tools like recommendation engines and that help predict customer behavior in real time, which again leverages Flash technology. We will also see a lot of data mining, artificial intelligence, and scores of Web 3.0 applications that will need Flash to accelerate the applications and provide the best customer experience. In closing, innovation has always been been integral to HGST, having pioneered game-changing technologies for decades, from the world's very first RAM hard drive to today's advanced SSD technology. That's why we offer such a wide range of SSDs and HDDs for every application vertical, so you can pick the right drive to accelerate your applications. With that, I would turn it back to Sean.
All right, thanks, Chris. So now let's take a look at what the folks at Rose-Hulman were going through. So when we talk about the case study, and it's available on the DataOn Storage website, they had a fairly traditional 1 gig iSCSI SAN. They were using some legacy infrastructure on that. They moved about 80 VMs over to the Microsoft Hyper-V platform, and then one of their core ERP applitions from LQN. And they also wanted to prepare themselves for Microsoft Windows Server 2016. So when they started talking about building systems, they tried to pick a configuration that made a lot of sense for what they're doing today, lowered their existing costs, and gave them scale for the future. So we're going to try something a little different than what we've done in the past here, where instead of just presenting the raw slides, we've actually set up an interview that we recorded with them. So we're going to take you through that now and let them tell you in their own words why they thought this move made the right sense.
Let's welcome the team from the Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. Now, case studies are wonderful in the sense that they give you an understanding of what people use to implement a specific solution. What they often don't tell you is what the decision process was behind making this choice and why they used the things that they did. So that's what we really want to do with this video interview with the team from Rose-Hulman. Okay, so guys, tell us a little bit about the business and operational drivers about making the move from your iSCSI SAN to Microsoft storage spaces.
Microsoft has been pushing the use of less expensive storage technologies, moving off of expensive SAN like iSCSI and Fiber Channel. And with the advent of SMB3 to support Hyper-V workloads, we felt it was a good time to look at less complex, less expensive technologies.
Okay guys, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Now, let's talk a little bit about the DataOn Storage Cluster in a Box solution. How'd you learn about it? Where'd you hear about it?
It was actually one of the supported platforms it was probably TechEd, wasn't it? Yeah. At TechEd. They had the hardware there. The Microsoft presenter actually talked about it, so we felt comfortable with the company and their technology that it was going to be a viable platform.
So once you learned about the solution, you obviously had the choice between a pre-built option or doing a build your own. What made you decide to go with the pre-built solution from DataOn Storage?
So having seen it in action, we felt comfortable that it was a good pre-built package solution for our needs.
Now, one of the other things is obviously deployment is key when you're bringing in a new solution. Can you tell us about the deployment experience, what it was like for your team, and how that went for you?
Cluster in a box devices, at least the DataOn ones, to me were really easy to configure. I mean, so one of them for our main file shares, we had a JBOD that was attached, and everything's color coded and easy to get where all the plugs go. And I mean, they're just really simple to deploy and get up and running. And the out-of-box wizard setup walks you through everything pretty quickly, so you can get up and running.
The DataOn Storage Cluster in a Box was a nicely packaged implementation of the multi-node shared SAS storage, JBOD storage. It made a simple to spec and simple to purchase, already integrated solution.
Now, one of the other big changes that you made in this implementation is you added flash technology from HGST with their UltraStar Flash. Can you tell us how that affected the performance on the system and performance for applications?
We decided to use the Flash for storage tiering and take advantage of some technology in Server 2012 that allows us to implement tiering. And what we're seeing is, I don't have hard numbers, but what we're seeing is that with the SSD that we're using, somewhere between 75 and 100% of disk access is coming off of the SSD.
So obviously you guys have done this and appreciate you sharing your insights. What other advice would you give your IT brethren who are looking at converting from traditional SANs, whether they're iSCSI, FCOE, or Fiber Channel, into Microsoft storage spaces?
Once you've done it a time or two, it goes very quickly, and you can establish clusters in multiple locations without the expense of hardware or networking for a SAN architecture.
Yeah, and I guess I'd add to that that that's another place where you can simplify. If you're in an environment where you can afford to set up a totally separate storage network that's independent of your regular network, that's terrific, but many places can't. And if you can't, then you're going to get into VLAN tagging and trying to balance and utilization, and that's just something we don't even have to worry about now.
All right, now that's some good advice, guys. So talk to me a little bit about the feedback you've gotten from the end user community. What have they said in terms of performance or user experience as you've made this transformation?
And I would add that in the VMs that we're migrating to the infrastructure that's stored ultimately in the DataOn device, I mean, we haven't had any complaints about performance, or as Steve mentioned earlier, we haven't seen any degradation when compared to our previous clusters that were backed by the iSCSI environment.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where if you're not getting any feedback from the users, that's actually a good thing because it means they're not complaining.
So you've done a couple of things. You've done your Hyper-V environment. You've rolled out one of your ERP applications. What's next on your rollout plans?
Well, we've already ordered 2 additional cluster-in-a-boxes to continue our architectural change away from iSCSI.
Then the last question is, obviously Windows 2016 is right around the corner. What type of features in 2016 are you guys looking forward to adding to your solution today using the DataOn Storage cluster and box?
Our goal is to decommission our 2 iSCSI SANs June 30th of 2017 and completely replace that with the cluster-in-a-box storage technology with SMB3 across all 3 of our data centers.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us today. And with that, we'll move on to some of our other speakers.
All right. So next up is Howard Lowe from DataOn Storage.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for all the speakers from Microsoft, HGST, and Rose-Hulman. And thanks for joining our webinar today. So a little bit about DataOn and who we are, and most of you probably know us already. So Data has been around for since 1987, and the storage division has been delivering storage to the market for the last 10 years. We're really the pioneer of cluster-aware storage platform with HAJBODs and hyperconverged CIB solutions. And we're also the first to be certified on the Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 storage spaces platform. One thing you may not know, with our commitment to Microsoft, we have now over 400 unique customer deployments on Microsoft storage spaces. And what you see is just a sample of the customer profile of who we have worked with. So one of the key value for DataOn is really our partnership, working with Microsoft, HGST, and really integrating the state-of-the-art technology into our platform is what makes us unique. We spend a lot of time on certification, testing, integration to make sure that our platform are really extensively tested to make sure it's optimized for the Microsoft solution. And more importantly, working with our customer to define their requirements and understand what they need to do to move from their SAN to Microsoft software-defined storage. And we want to make sure we continue that throughout the sales process. A brief roadmap of what we have done in the last 5 years. Since 2012, when we joined Microsoft, we introduced many different product lines, JBots, to scale file server system, to CIB, to technology from 6 to 12 gig SaaS. These are all technology integration that's all very important to make sure we have the latest component and systems on the Microsoft platform. For our scale file server platform, which many of our customers use today, you'll see our key value are testing, validation, integration, and optimization. We spend a lot of time making sure all the integration works properly, and when it gets to the hand of the customers, it works. This is a sample of a deployment for an enterprise customer. You can see that it's a 3-node scale file server connected to 4 JBots. It provides resiliencies on disk level and also enclosure awareness. And many of our customers continue to deploy very types of scenario that fits their need. In all our systems, we provide benchmarks for our customers, pre-sales, and after we deliver the system. We do extensive testing to make sure we have the right benchmark performance data for the customer so they know exactly what they're getting ahead of time. The cluster-in-a-box solution is one of the flagship products for us. And for that, it's integrated with shared storage, and it's really the appliance ready. So when it's out of the box, you could plug it in and everything works well. And you'll see that with our test with all-flash storage, you can see the performance increase over 45% just due to tunings and performance improvement from DataOn. With the 2016 coming, DataOn is spending a lot of time making sure we have the right product platform to meet the customer's needs. From the infrastructure perspective, we have multiple product lines from CIB to S2D to scale file servers, plus all the certifications. In addition, we want to integrate all the Microsoft technology into our platform. And with 2016, we will have another layer of software above our platform to help our customer manage their reliability and daily tasks. This is a snapshot of our 2016 roadmap. And I'm happy to go through that with the customer when you reach out to us. We have additional JBots, CIBs, certified platform, backup storage, and also an entire portfolio of 2016 S2D platforms. And these are very exciting for us. And by the time we launch, we'll have everything certified and with choices and flexibility. With the coming of 2016, our goal is to make sure we have the right product and solution for our customer. And moving into Azure, we'll have Azure Stack ready. So make sure that MAS is ready. Here's a sample of a case study we have on our website today. So today, thanks to Rose-Hulman for helping us. But feel free to go to our website and look at other customer case studies to make sure that you understand which one fits your deployment. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Howard. Appreciate that. So a little bit of time for some Q&A. So a couple of questions so that we had that came over from the system. Alexander, I think you had asked this one was, does VM performance troubleshooting become very tricky with hyperconverged architectures? And I think the answer is, I don't know if it vary is the right word, but certainly there's incremental complexity. As you bring in hyperconverged systems, you're dealing with a slightly more complex environment. You're dealing with nodes of storage, networking, and compute all at the same time. And sometimes the challenge is going to be is the problem in the handoff between those nodes, or is the handoff, or is the challenge inside that node? And are you having challenges with specific items related to that? So I do think it will be slightly more complex on that. I'm looking at the chat session here, and then said, Alexander, you said there was, thanks, Philip. I see if someone has a similar question to mine, there's no answer. Maybe I missed that in the data stream. If you could repost that for me, that would be good. And then, Howard, would you like to take the next one here? What is DataOn's plan for adding storage spaces direct to existing CIB clusters already deployed?
Thank you. That's a good question. So for CIB, we'll have different product portfolio that will be qualified for 2016. For storage spaces direct, you will have to look at our future S2D portfolio, and we'll make sure our CIB are qualified for 2016. With the distinction between NTFS and REFS, we need to make sure our CIB fits that portfolio, and we're in the process making sure all the testing and qualification are in process.
All right. So Alexander, I see your note here on the about the columns on NVE and NVMe. I don't know the answer to that offhand, and unfortunately Matt did have to step off. So if you can, Mike, is there a way for him to send a private note with his email, and we can get him and Matt connected on that?
Yeah, it's just on the bottom right of the chat, you should be able to send a private message to Sean Walsh.
Yeah, so if you do that, Alexander, where is that? Yeah, where it says all, see the button that says all, I think if you click that, you can send a message to, yeah, you can just send it to me directly, or send it to moderators, and then we'll get Matt to answer that directly. Thank you. Next question. Any plans to have an updated ACS version with storage spaces? Howard?
Thanks, George. Thanks for asking the question. So we are testing with Microsoft extensively, and there's several platforms we're working with them for S2D. So for ACS, we need to make sure we have the right setup to make sure that it's ACS qualified. So I'll reach out to you separately on an email to make sure as we go through the ACS process and when we have the product in place.
All right. Any other questions, folks? All right. With that, we will give you back 15 minutes of your day. Again, thank you very much for attending. And as we said, these slides will be made available on the DataOn Storage website, and we will also provide a link to the recording of this webinar. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.